All right, good evening. Appreciate you leading, Brad. Those are good songs. It was very beautiful. All right, it's good to be with you tonight. If you've got a Bible, we're going to be in Genesis 33. We've been for a while now on Sunday nights looking at lessons in the life of Jacob, and we're going to continue there tonight. The last few weeks, I've told you we're at a major transition in Jacob's life. Everything slows down in the narrative, and you've got a series of scenes that all deal with this one moment in his life where he's leaving behind 20 years in one place and he's going on to the next chapter. And those scenes are chapter 31, a confrontation with Laban. Remember that guy he's been sort of wrestling with for 20 years that he just couldn't get along with. Then you've got, in the middle of two encounters, you've got a wrestling encounter with God in chapter 32 that we looked at last week. And then chapter 33, a confrontation with Esau, who he has been at odds with since birth. You got these two brothers that couldn't get along, and they're about to come face to face. And so this text is one of the classics on reconciliations. We're going to talk about that some today. My brother, Jared, is up here. He's getting real nervous right now because I'm talking about him while he's up there, but also because I'm talking about two brothers who can't get along, and he knows if I'm going to share any personal stories, I've only got one brother to talk about. Actually, Jared and I have a really good relationship, and it's not because we've always gotten along. It's because we were taught to reconcile. And isn't that how it works? Siblings, friends, brothers and sisters in Christ, marriage. It's not because we always get along. It's because we learn to reconcile. So this is a very important topic to come back to again and again. Just want to throw up just a simple definition of it. Reconciliation is the restoration of friendly relationships and of peace where before there had been hostility and alienation. So be thinking a little bit in your mind about where you might right now have some hostility and alienation in relationships, in your home, somebody you haven't talked to in a while, in the workplace. You might kind of have that in mind. And if you don't, it's probably going to come up in the future. So take some of these things to heart because you're going to encounter some situations in life, even with very close relationships, that turn sour and where you've got conflict and it's hard to get along. All right, so let's get into it. We're going to start with Jacob's approach. So he is about to encounter his brother. Let's look at the text, verse 1. And Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. You'll remember he was very afraid. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two female servants, and he put the servants with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all, in the safest place. He himself went on before them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Okay, just stop for a minute, and I want to bring out 3 things some lessons for reconciliation based on Jacob's approach. Part of it which is in this text, and part of it which we have already got. The first is initiative. So we see Jacob is afraid. He knows Esau's coming, 400 men with him. We've already seen his anxiety last week about what's going to happen when he meets his brother who 20 years ago said, "I will kill you." Now they're about to come face to face, and he is afraid. And you see the risk. I mean, he's very cautious. He's dividing up his family, and I'm not supportive of this way of evaluating his family and deciding who's more important and putting the certain ones in the safest place. But I want you to see he's anxious. He's distressed. He knows this might not go well. But here's the thing that's easy to overlook. Jacob initiated this encounter. This is happening because Jacob initiated it. If you go back to Genesis 32, 3 through 5, it says, "And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom." instructing them, "Thus shall you say to my lord Esau, thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, and female servants. I have sent to tell my lord in order that I may find favor in your sight." Now here's the thing. Jacob is not going to Edom. He's not going to where Esau is. He's going to Canaan. But he sends a messenger in advance to tell Esau, to go to Esau, because he wants to find favor in his sight. He could have avoided his brother, but he doesn't. I think that's interesting. He initiates it. Would have been safer, easier, a lot less risky to just avoid Esau altogether, but he initiates an encounter between them. I think that's important because sometimes when we get alienated from somebody, we will stay distant for a long time. Sometimes with the mentality that, well, when they get their act together or they change their attitude, they'll come to me. And we just kind of leave it out there. And you've probably known siblings that haven't spoken to each other for 20, 30 years or longer. It shouldn't be that way. We ought to take the initiative to reconcile. You look at Jesus' teaching on reconciliation, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, although that would be really good. I just want to bring out a contrast that's made in the two places in Matthew where Jesus teaches on reconciliation. In Matthew 5, here's my paraphrase of it. If they, the other person, are not okay with you, go to them. Go seek reconciliation. If they are not okay with you, you go to them. In Matthew 18, if you are not okay with them, go to them. I think that's fascinating. In both places, whether you're in the wrong or they're in the wrong, he says, you go. You go seek reconciliation. Take the initiative. It's so important to the heart of Jesus that we don't leave these relationships at odds, that we go as far as we can to pursue peace with one another. So, initiative. Second is humility. We see in the text he's bowing 7 times. That is not, I don't believe that's empty posturing. The 7 is significant. It's a number that represents completeness or wholeness. And a lot of people that I read on this are saying that it is saying, I am completely, to the fullest degree possible, taking the lower position. I'm making it absolutely clear. Now, this is interesting because Jacob has always been the one grasping for the top spot. He wants the best. He wants what's not his. And here, in the most complete way possible, he's taking the lower position. It's even different than the confrontation with Laban in chapter 31. You remember when he has this little confrontation, well, it's a pretty big confrontation with Laban, and he's vindicated. It appears that he's in the right, and do you remember what he does? He lashes out in that, we'll call it the 20 years speech. These 20 years, and he just starts laying into the guy, and it's this really self-righteous speech. I'm in the right, you're in the wrong, and he's taking this position of I am over you, I am better than you. The end of that speech we see right here. He says, God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands, and he rebuked you last night. That was Jacob's attitude in chapter 31. Chapter 33, it's very different. He himself went on before them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. He takes the position of lower than the other. That's the posture to approach one that you are alienated from, or one that you have any kind of hostility with, a humble position. Paul on reconciliation talked about this just a few weeks ago, because it's this place in Philippians where you've got these 2 women who aren't getting along, and before he ever says anything to those 2 women, he shows, here is the way you do it. Here's the way that you become of one mind or agree in the Lord. In humility, count others more significant than yourselves. That's the approach. And we know it, but we've got to hear it, because when you're at odds with somebody, it's so natural to take the I'm right. You need to come around to my way of seeing it. And you might be right, but you shouldn't be in a prideful place. You take a low position, a humble one that recognizes the worth, the significance of another, even listening to them with respect for their views. Third thing here that's a little bit hard to see, but I believe it's happening. The more I study this text, the more I could see that what's happening here is not Jacob just trying to say, let me just soften him up a little bit. Let me just do a few things to kind of ease the tension here. I believe this is an act of repentance for the wrong that Jacob has done toward his brother. If you remember chapter 32, part of the preparation for this encounter, along with prayer to God, was he sent presents. Remember that? Wave after wave of presents that he sent of livestock to his brother. So his brother is going to encounter a series of gifts of all the blessing that God has given to Jacob. He's going to give to Jacob before they ever encounter each other. He tells you what he's thinking in chapter 32, verse 20. For he thought, I may appease him with the present that goes ahead of me, and afterward I shall see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. Now that translated word there, appease, it's more commonly translated atonement. That's the word, it's atonement. He's trying to make amends. He's trying to make it right. He'll even use the word later about the blessing. The blessing that he took, remember that? Deceptively taking Esau's blessing. He's trying to make it right. He's not reversing it so that he's not blessed. He's blessed, and this is something that God in his sovereignty is doing. But he recognizes, I was wrong in the way that I did that. And he's restoring. He's trying to make things right. So just in summary, a few things to take away from that. Where there's hostility or estrangement in relationships, take the initiative. Refuse to think of yourself as better than the other. And acknowledge your own wrong and try to make it right. I think those are some good principles to take from that. Now let's look at Esau's response. Jacob has made preparation. He's approached, bowing to the ground 7 times, has all of the gifts. Now let's see what Esau does. Verse 4. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And when Esau lifted up his eyes and saw the women and children, he said, Who are these with you? Jacob said, The children whom God has graciously given your servant. Then the servants drew near, and they and their children bowed down. Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down. And last, Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. Esau said, What do you mean by all this company that I met? I think he's referring to the gifts that came in advance. Jacob answered, To find favor in your sight, my lord. But Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. Jacob said, No, please. If I have found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand. For I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God. And you've accepted me. Please accept my blessing. That's interesting to me right there. Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. Thus he urged him, and he took it. Man, that's a remarkable scene. And it's so surprising. He's been afraid. You got these 400 men coming with Esau. It looks like a clash is about to happen. The last time they saw each other, Esau wanted to kill him. This is not what we expect, except that we've heard the story so many times, we know it. But if we had not seen it, it's shocking. It's surprising. First thing that stands out is that embrace. It's so surprising. Instead of conflict, you get the embrace. So remember Esau, this man's man, this guy in the woods, this tough guy, and he's mad and furious. And here he is embracing and kissing his brother. And you just imagine the relief that Jacob would have felt in that instance. I think sometimes where we've got estranged relationships, hostility, we don't talk for a long time. I think sometimes we underestimate how gracious another person might be or how that meeting might go. We put it off for years and years. We never talk about it. It might surprise us how quickly the tension would go away if we would just bring it up. how much was so quickly healed by that embrace. It's pretty powerful. I was thinking about Jesus, his teaching on love, and if you remember the way he talked about the love of enemies. You remember that? Don't just love people that are easy to love. Love your enemies. There's got to be a willingness in the Christian heart to embrace the one who's at odds with you. That's a Christ-like way of being in the world. A willingness to embrace the one who is at odds with you. This is what Jesus says, if you greet only your brothers, now don't think siblings, because that's what we've got in the story, but if you greet only those that you get along with, that you've got a lot in common with, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Isn't the love of God such that your embrace, your greeting, your normal expressions of love would go beyond the ones who are deserving of it, that it's natural to give it to? The love of God, the love of Christ is much more than that. Embrace. Oh man, I was in a meeting one time. It was really awkward. There's been some tension between two people for a long time. Everybody knew it. They weren't talking. It was affecting everybody. And one day we're in a meeting, and one of those two that had been at odds, he just brought it up in a really humble way. He didn't say anything about the other guy. It was all about him. He said, this is what I've done wrong. It's not right to this brother. It's not right to you all. It was so good. And I'll never forget this because nothing was said. And I was in the room. I'm one of those guys that's real slow. After the fact, I start going, whoa, you should have said something. A guy just laid it all out there, and we didn't say anything. We went on to the next agenda item. Now, I did go talk to him after the meeting and just say, man, when somebody says, I blew it, we ought to be quick to embrace and give grace. But I'll tell you, sometimes in the moment, you don't do it. And I'm just inspired by this to be quick to embrace. When you see a person, when they're saying, I've done wrong, don't make them drag it out. Be quick to embrace. Second, accept. Jacob needed to make amends. He needed to make it right. I think it was weighing on his conscience. You see some of that in this text. He needed to do something to make things right with Esau. That's why he's bringing all those gifts. I stole your blessing. I was deceptive. I need to make something right. I need to give this. Esau, he didn't need it. And what I love in the story is that he didn't insist on it. He didn't demand, well, you took all that, now give it all back. He's even saying, no, you don't need to give me this. I've got plenty. He's not insisting on it. But Jacob continues to say it. In fact, those words, accept, that's a key word in there. We won't read all that, but you can see how much accept shows up in there. It's a major part of this story. Jacob is needing to be accepted, and Esau's doing the accepting, and part of that is accepting this gift of making it right. Now, I don't think it's very often that we're in a situation where somebody's bringing us a bunch of livestock and saying, I need to make it right. Although there's probably some cases where that happens, and we might be inclined to say, no, I don't need that. But we understand that it helps a person to make it right. There is a way that we all experience this, and it's when you hear those words, I'm sorry. Be quick to say, it's okay. There's a lot of grace in those two words. That's three technically, right? It's okay. Man, be quick to say it. You kids, with your siblings, with your friends, be quick to say, it's okay. Be quick to apologize too. Be quick to acknowledge you're wrong. But when somebody says it to you, don't make them drag it out. It's okay. Third word that I think of with Esau is reflect. Reflect God. Just stood out to me more studying this time, Jacob's words in there, verse 10, I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God. You've accepted me. There's something about the horizontal relationship that's has to do with the vertical a little bit. He's got those two. He understands. I've done wrong before God. I've done wrong toward my brother. Both of those are happening. And he's seeing something of the acceptance of God in the acceptance of his brother. Something of the vertical acceptance in the horizontal. And we're supposed to do that. We're supposed to reflect in the horizontal the vertical. The way that our Father is with us, we're supposed to be with one another. Jesus talks about this, that this is how you're to be children of your Father in heaven, by being like Him in this world, in the horizontal, to be like Him. Now, there's a story in Luke 15. It's called, a lot of people call it the greatest story ever told. It's the story of the prodigal son, the story of the father and the younger son and the older son. Beautiful story. Truly, the greatest story ever told fits it. As I was reading about Esau, you probably pick up on language that you know from the greatest story ever told. I just want to look at a part of that. You remember that the prodigal son has gone off. He's been in wild living. He decides to come back. He's unworthy of that, but he comes back. And he, the prodigal son, arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. Isn't that familiar language? I mean, that's a powerful scene. That's one you don't expect. This son has lived in wild living, and the father runs to him, embraced him, and kissed him. Now, for anybody that knows their Old Testament, they recognize that language. It's the same language of Genesis 33, verse 4. But Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, and fell on his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. I can't help but think when Jesus told that story about the father, he picked up the language from Esau. Isn't that just like God? To say, let me take old rascal Esau and show you how he reflected the face of the father. This is what the father is like. He runs, he embraces, he kisses. And we're supposed to be like that. The horizontal is supposed to look like the vertical. Now, real quickly, that's some of the main thing I wanted to talk about. But I want to briefly look at the end of this chapter as we see separate paths happen after this reconciliation. Let's look at it real quickly. Genesis 33, verse 12. Then Esau said, let us journey on our way, and I will go ahead of you. But Jacob said to him, my Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the nursing flocks and herds are a care to me. If they are driven hard for one day, all the flocks will die. So Esau wants them to travel together. We've reconciled. Man, we're brothers. Let's go together. And he says, well, I'm going to need to go at a slower pace. So let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly at the pace of the livestock that are ahead of me and at the pace of the children until I come to my Lord in Seir. Okay, he's not going to Seir. That's where his brother's from. So Esau said, let me leave with you some of the people who are with me. But he said, sort of like for protection probably, he said, what need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord. You don't need to do that. It's enough that we've reconciled. Just let it be. We'll go our own ways. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. But Jacob journeyed to Succoth, two different directions. Succoth is in the direction of Canaan. Esau is going to Edom. Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built himself a house and made booths for his livestock. Therefore, the name of the place is called Succoth, or booths. And we don't know how long he stayed there. It appears that he stayed for a period of time. It could be a short time waiting until it was the right time to cross the Jordan River into Canaan. Could have been that he was there for many years before he goes on. But the narrative moves pretty quick. And Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. on his way from Padan Aram, and he camped before the city. And from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the piece of land on which he had pitched his tent. There he erected an altar and called it El Elohi Israel. So it's sort of a messy finish to a really beautiful story. And I love it because that's real life, isn't it? It's like really beautiful 1 minute, and then you're going, well, this is kind of, I don't know what to do here. And so this is a really strange thing. They end up going separate ways. There seems like a little bit of this old deception comes out in Jacob a little bit. And we're just, what do you do with this? Well, real quickly, I want to share 2 principles that I think are important for relationships that come out of reflection on this. First, it's possible and sometimes necessary to keep a friendly relationship while going separate ways. God has been really clear to Jacob. He is not going to Edom, he is going to Canaan. You go back to Genesis 31:13, God has said, you go to the land of your kindred. He's on orders from God to return to his homeland, not to go to Edom. He knows where he's supposed to go. Esau is trying to pull him a different direction, and he knows that's not the way that I'm supposed to go. I'm supposed to go this way. I was thinking about when I was in college, I had friends early on in my time at school that weren't going the way of Christ. And turning my life in the direction of Christ meant not that I become at odds with those friends and say, you terrible guy, you're not my friends anymore. You don't do that. But there was some distance. They were not going to be my best, most influential friends. I had to form some new friendships because I was going a different direction. And I think for our young folks, you need to hear that, because being good friends with somebody does not mean you go the same direction as them. And what we see in this story is 2 brothers who are able to reconcile and leave on friendly terms, but they go separate ways. Second principle in here is it's better to be straightforward about your intentions, even if it risks fracturing a relationship. Jacob, he finds a way out of going to Seir. He finds a way out of it, but he kind of resorts to his old deceptive practices, and he makes it sound like, well, yeah, maybe I'll get there at some point, all the while knowing he's going a different way. And just as a matter of principle, it's better just to be upfront with people about this is the direction I'm going to go. I think Jacob didn't want to spoil what had just happened. And sometimes you'll feel that way, is that I don't want to risk the relationship, but sometimes it does risk a relationship to do what's right and to go the right direction. And it's better to just be upfront about it, to be straightforward about it. This brings the chapter of Jacob's life to a close. And I just, in closing, want to highlight here. He gets to Canaan. Okay, it's a little bit messy, the deception that happens in there, but he does go where God wants him to go. He eventually makes his way to Canaan. And when he gets there, he erects an altar, and he calls it El Elohi Israel. Now, I've read this so many times and just read it so fast and don't realize what's happening. But in the way that the story is told, bookends are being pulled together. When Jacob left home, when he left Canaan, and he was headed to where Laban was, he has this encounter with God, and he sets up a pillar. And it comes full circle to this moment where he's back in Canaan, and he has this altar, and he names it this. It's bringing those 2 things together. In Genesis 28, 20 through 22, that's when Jacob left home. It's the longest vow recorded in the Old Testament. Jacob is making a promise, and in Jacob's style, it's sort of messy. He's kind of bargaining with God, but if you'll remember, he said, if you, God, will be with me, if you will keep me, if you will give me bread and clothing, so that I come home in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. Well, he is gone, and now he's come back. And when he gets back, he calls that altar El Elohi Israel, which means God, the God of Israel. And remember, that's his new name that he was just given in the last scene, was Israel. And so when he comes full circle and he gets all the way back home, he says, God, my God. And that's the story, that chapter of Jacob's life is defined by that one person, God. It's been a mess. It's been a struggle. But God has been a part of all of it, has been faithful in all of it. Through every messy relationship, through every difficulty, God has been in it, and it's been a central message in these messages that we've had. We're going to talk a little bit more of Jacob, but that chapter comes to a close, and it's all about God in the struggle, in the mess, being faithful to Jacob. All right, I think I went over my time. If you've got any need tonight, you got something on your heart, if you want to become a Christian, be baptized into Christ. I'm over time, but we are not in a hurry. So you're welcome to come to the front now while we stand and sing.